Hello, my name's Andrew Thate from Mines and Money. Delighted to be joined today by Steve Cope, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer for Silver Viper Minerals. Delighted to have you with us today, Steve.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, it's a good way to start off the new year.
Well, for our viewers who don't know too much about Silver Viper Minerals, would you like us to give us a quick overview about the company?
Yeah, Silver Viper Minerals is a company we started in 2017. It's got a single asset, the La Virginia project, in it at the moment. We got involved with that project. It was originally a mine finder's asset. They went looking for another Dolores mine and settled on La Virginia being the lookalike at surface. They ultimately sold the Dolores mine and their company for 1.5 billion to Pan American Silver. And then metals prices, fell off. It was sitting on the shelf. We were able to bring the whole package back together, did a deal with Pan American and a local group of stakeholders to have the right to acquire the project 100%. We then made a discovery on the El Ruby portion of the project, which was 4 kilometers north of where any of the previous work had been done. And since then, it, came out with a maiden resource, hit some very exciting and, pretty spectacular results, have shown the potential for this to both be an open pit heap leach mine as well as an underground, high grade operation.
So what are your plans for 2023 then?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're gonna resume drilling here fairly quickly into the new year. We're aiming to have a follow-up resource to our 2021 resource that will cover, expanding the open pit, but also starting to delineate the underground resource, probably towards the end of the year. We've been doing a large mapping and sampling program around the project and have hit some very exciting results there, showing the potential on a lot of different areas to make new discoveries on the project, finding similar stuff on surface to what we saw at El Ruby, but these breccia structures that run in parallel to each other. So again, we'll be a small portion of our drilling program. We'll be doing some reconnaissance drilling on those targets. If we make a new discovery, same as we did at El Ruby, then we'll look to start, systematically delineating a resource at those target areas as well.
So the geology sounds good, the project sounds good. I know from talking to investors, they're always interested in the background of the management team. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, the management group itself, we fall under the Belcara management group. So right now we have 3 public companies under our group's management. Barcelli Minerals in northern Sweden, which is a joint venture with Agnico Eagle. Orex Minerals in Durango, Mexico, which has joint ventures with Fresnillo and Pan American Silver, the 2 largest silver producers in the world. And then Silver Viper, which is the youngest company within the group. Obviously we've got our La Virginia project. We have a private vehicle as well that we're, maybe going public at some point this year. That's kind of the most companies we would ever have under a group is 4. But yeah, it's a group that allows us, it's a bit different than some of the other groups because our personnel really does cross over and help out in all the different companies. But also, like everyone else that has these shared kind of company groups, allows us to share G&A costs, make sure our burn rates are as low as they can be, and the money is going into the ground where it belongs.
So you talked about you've obviously got some sharing of cross-management expertise. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those key sort of like management sort of like employees that really help make the team?
Yeah, I mean, Gary Cope was the founder, who was my father. He's been around in the industry since, I was a kid. He originally was a stockbroker, but then eventually took over junior mining companies that he had put, money into. So I've grown up around the sector. He's definitely been influential in building a lot of the team and the older guard that we have in the office. We have a fantastic group of senior geologists, Art Freeze, who worked for Caminco and worked for Goldcorp, as well as, juniors around the world at various points. He lived in Peru for about a decade. His family was raised there. We have Ben Whiting, who, if you're meeting anyone in the industry, they either were a student of his or a colleague of his when he was coming through Queen's University, which, tends to produce the majority of the geologists in our industry. We have Dale Britliff as an advisor who, again, came from Australia, grew up with a father who was a metallurgist. And our recent hire was Tatiana Alva, who again has worked around the world and has a lot of experience working for both producers and explorers. Then we have our accounting team. Ross Wilmot's been around forever in the industry and working as a group, and and then Carla Hartzenberg's taken over and she's the CFO on Silver Viper and will be on any of the new companies. And it's a very solid team that has a lot of experience working around the world or working for various companies. And I think that's important. And especially on the geology side for a junior explorer, there's no other, single group that I know of that has the geological experience and reputation that our group does, at evaluating. And because of that, we get a lot of projects brought to us before they'll be ever brought to one of our peer companies.
Mm-hmm. Who are your main shareholders?
We've got about 20 funds that own Silver Viper at the moment. Larger funds would be Sprott Asset Management, and their silver and their gold fund there. We've got Ingalls and Schneider out of New York, Donald Smith and Company out of New York, US Global out of San Antonio, Commodity Capital. There's I don't want to miss people. There's a lot of those would be the larger of the funds. They definitely. The Contrarian Group out of Newport Beach, Peter Ubroth there. I think we're the only mining group that they own, but that's a relationship we've developed. I mean, there's a famous name from the US that was once the commissioner of baseball and ran the LA Olympics and owns Pebble Beach Golf Club facility. And so he owns all of our stocks in all of our groups. He's been investing privately in them and put them into their fund.
Well, I mean, that seems to be a really, really strong lineup of investors. I'm sure that many of your peers would be very, very envious. Just one last sort of question. There are obviously other companies out there that investors might be considering that are very, very similar to obviously what you're doing and what you're mining. If you had to say what is your unique selling point, is what makes you and Silver Viper Minerals stand out from your peers, what are the sort of 1 or 2 points that you would point out to those?
Well, for us, yeah, that's all. I mean, that's always an interesting question. And one of the things, I look at the industry right now, and to me, obviously gold, we're about 55% gold, 45% silver when you look at our assays and our resource. Mm-hmm. And I think that in itself is important because it exposes us and what our business model is ultimately to sell our company to one of the mining companies. We look for, large assets that meet the portfolio, the requirements of those large mining companies. And so when we have that, it exposes us to both the silver producers and the gold producers. We're very, listing all three of our companies, we're very big on jurisdictional risk. So we check off that box right off the number 1 silver producing country in the world in Mexico. And even within Mexico, we're very picky of which states we're willing to work in. But that being said, what else separates us is there's not a lot of exposure to, grades and resources like ours in the silver space. I look at it daily and I would say there's a handful out there of quality companies that have exposure to silver. Ours is still early. We're post, discovery and have the ability to expand that and grow that to, if you're talking about on a silver basis, 100, 200 million plus ounces of silver with additional success on the project. We're going, I think on our next resource, we'll probably cross that 100 million mark or close to it. And so, we have this ability to invest in us right now. And then given what's happened in the world and the investment community, you're getting an opportunity to invest in one of those high quality assets that has exposure to both the, the rising metal prices of gold and silver at a time where our share prices are all down, close to all-time lows. So again, I think it presents an opportunity for investors to pick their best, companies. I think people are going to do well regardless in the space, even if they pick a bad company. I think it's probably going to go up here over the next few months. But if you're looking for those big wins and you're looking, when you're talking about the junior space, especially when they're down here, these are when, they're a little bit high risk, but you're looking for those, 10 plus baggers because the potential for these stocks to go up when we start putting out good results and expanding resources in a rising metals environment, you look at the past runs and past cycles, and this is where, an amazing amount of money can be made when you time these cycles right and pick the right companies.
Yeah, well, certainly, 2022 was a choppy year, an up and down year for gold. Certainly don't think it's going to be the case for 2023. Nearly every analyst I speak to is very, very positive about the sector. It's been a pleasure having you on Mines Money TV, Steve. Wish you all the best for 2023. That was Steve Cope, President and Chief Executive Officer of Silver Viper Minerals, brought to you by Mines Money TV in association with Red Cloud. Thank you very much for your time, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. It was a pleasure.